All right, let's tee it up. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marshall Dial. I'm speaking from Toronto, Canada. I am so excited to begin this serial course that we're calling Stop at Nothing. This was a concept developed by Dr. Ivo, who is an amazing teacher and equally creative in his educational perspective. No matter where any of us live, Utah, Mexico City, Canada, COVID has had a profound impact on adult learning. This is particularly pronounced in medical education. So wherever you live, depending on whether you're in an urban center, a dense population, there's no question that your learning has been impacted. This is even more magnified in surgical learning. And what we're trying to do here is offer you an opportunity to supplement that with a unique opportunity to use live virtual surgery as a way to develop your surgical knowledge and gain some greater understanding of the various steps of cataract surgery. So in Stop at Nothing, we will run this course every Friday for the next 6 weeks. Each week, we will slow it down and do a deep dive into the nuances and complexities of each unique step of surgery. Today's subject will be capsulorhexis. Our instructors for the day are Dr. Ivo, who some of you may have been with earlier in the Spanish session, and then joining us as our guest mentor is Dr. Jeff Petty from the Moran Eye Center in Salt Lake City, Utah, which, having been there a number of times, I can say is one of the most amazing places to learn ophthalmology in the United States, if not the world. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Petty, Jeff, to walk us through some of the basic science behind the idea of using simulation to learn capsulorhexis.
Good morning, good afternoon. It is an honor to be here. It's an honor to be here with Ivo. He's an extraordinary educator, and I must say that the work that is being done by VR Magic, IC, Ivo, and others, that's going to have ramifications for many years for not only your training, but also for your patients in the future. I am in Salt Lake City. I am also in what's called an Airstream trailer, and that is something that we use to travel all around the United States. I also have several children who may or may not join me at some point, and I certainly welcome them in and will kick them out whenever it will harm your education. So with that, again, honored to be here. Going to dive right in. There's a concept called construct validity. So construct validity means if you design a test to test something, you want to actually make sure the test will verify the behavior or the experience that you're trying to test. For instance, if I was trying to design a test that would determine how good of a football or a soccer player someone is, and I tested Leo Messi and then I tested Ivo, and if Ivo tested just as high as Leo Messi on that test, then that would have very poor construct validity because Ivo's a horrible football player. So what they did at the University of Iowa, they took expert surgeons, then they took novice surgeons, and none of these surgeons had any experience on the simulator, and they tested them in the capsulorhexis module. And what that showed is it's clearly that the experts performed better than the novices did, really showing that this skill, when you practice on a simulator, has very good construct validity, meaning you will be able to develop the skill that you're trying to emulate here with simulation. I'll go to that next slide. Again, just some of the summaries. And on the next slide, we've got another really interesting study. This is out of UCLA. So this one I really like. They actually looked back at resident complications, over 1,000 resident complications. And what they did is they had a pre-IC group and kind of a post-IC group, and it allowed for some really interesting data. So overall, we can go to the next slide. There was a 67% decrease in the number of capsulorhexis complications. That could be a run out from the capsulorhexis or otherwise. The thing that I really loved about this study that I think is important for you is they before, in this group that hadn't done work on the IC, they could clearly see a difference in complication rates between the early junior residents and then the senior residents. So if they hadn't done any IC, the junior residents had more complications than the senior residents, and that would make sense. Now, the thing that kind of blew my mind is that once the IC was introduced, that difference was eliminated. And that's what I've seen in my residents, that those that really, really dig in, they spend time on the Capsulorhexis and other modules, they truly, truly are often 30 or 40 patient surgeries ahead than they would have otherwise been, both in terms of the outcomes and then in terms of the complications. And then I'll just give you one little tip here that can really change your training. I'm a residency program director. When I work with a new resident and they're hitting the ground running and they're competent and they know what they're doing, instead of 1 or 1.5 cases with me during that OR day, they'll often get 2 or 3 cases. And then that magnifies throughout your training. So again, I don't mean to belabor the point, but hitting the ground running will not only allow you to be more prepared, it will also allow you to do more cases over the course of your residency training.
Me, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, so that's amazing, Jeff. At this point, we want to engage our audience. So please take part in a survey that we're going to pull up on the screen here momentarily. We want to understand where you're at in your training. At this stage, the audience and our experience in other webinars varies greatly. Some people have a lot of surgery, some are in the very beginning. So help us understand who you are. You know, and there is no single reality in learning. Everybody has a different experience. You know, I'm sure Jeff and Dr. Ivo can speak to this. You know, some people are naturals. Some find learning a little bit more difficult. So, you know, tell us a little bit of your experience and, you know, what that's been like learning this particular step of Capsulorhexis.
It's very interesting. I hope you can hear me. The questions are very interesting in a way that, you know, so many, we go for the number, right? We say, okay, if I did this amount of cataract surgery, I'm competent or not. And we have accreditation systems, so they say that that number is 80. But is it really 80? Are you confident in, you know, in managing every single case and situation that is going to happen? So let's see the results. If you can put the results, we can see, you know, about the audience, how, okay, we have it right there. Oh, we have a interesting audience. A lot of Phaco, more than 250, 30%. But also another 30% with, you know, less than 20 Phacos, another 20 between 21 and 75. But there is a lot of expert here. It's going to be interesting. The confidence is 50%, interesting, somewhat confident, and totally confident, another 30%. It would be very interesting to talk also what confidence is, right? I mean, how we define that you're confident with every single case. Number 3, rate of how challenging learning to do the Capsulorhexis is, somewhat challenging, 47%, and very challenging, another 18%.
That's interesting.
What do you think, Jeff?
79% of respondents are saying Capsulorhexis is a difficult step to learn. And I think most teachers would also acknowledge that the Capsulorhexis, when done poorly, also makes all the ensuing steps of cataract surgery incrementally more challenging. So this is a perfect framework for us to proceed with live virtual surgery and deconstruct some of what's to come.
I agree 100%. A bad Capsulorhexis, you're going to fight the rest of the surgery big time, right? What do you think about that, Jeff?
Yeah, I totally agree. The thing that I would say as well is some of you may be practicing where you're getting more experience with extra cap, traditional large incision or small incision extra cap early. And psychologically, that can do something to you that can make you feel like Phaco and the capsulorhexis is something that is beyond your skill set. Whereas those joining us from other countries, the only experience they will get in surgery is with Phaco. And so that step of capsulorhexis, while still difficult, is more normal for them. And it actually gives them permission to be, ironically, be a little bit more confident knowing that they are going to learn it. They have to learn it.
Okay, great. So let's start some surgery here. I'm going to try to do a couple of things right, a couple of things wrong. And I think the audience is the one who needs to figure out what I'm doing wrong and what is that, you know, because this is like a chain reaction, right? I do something wrong and then everything goes downhill. So let's see we're going to start comparing the image from the simulator. Let's see if we can make that happen. And since we're starting, I will always say this, you know, this is one of the most important things for every surgeon. It's about ergonomics, okay? Ergonomics are so important for us. I would like people to sit well, you know, to protect you say lumbar and cervical, is that correct in English?
Correct.
Okay, you need to protect your back. You need to be comfortable. You need to have your interpupillary distance. You need to, you know, and mostly hand position. Can we put the sign out here? La pantalla? Perfect. So right there, you're going to see something very interesting I like about simulation. And you're going to see that I have a certain amount of viscoelastics. And as I was saying, the hand position and everything starts with the hands. This is very important. We need to, let's see if we can see here. And let's put some viscoelastics. I hope you see pretty well how that the anterior chamber is going to full. Look everything, man, because I can make some mistakes. You know, I was drinking mate. I have been the entire morning working, you know, in webinars. So maybe, you know, let's see what happens here. I'm going to try to do the initial flap because I have an amazing forceps that can cut. Let's see what happens here. Probably I did something that wasn't very, very interesting, okay? So I couldn't have the flap. The capsule is behaving kind of interesting. Okay. I can fix that a little bit. Okay. I can, but I can then, you know, bring it to the center and control it perfectly. But then again, if I start to do this, you know, things can go wrong again. And look, oops, oh, what was that? Oh, there's something white there. Maybe that's not good. And then again, no, it's going. So you need to pick everything I'm doing right and I'm doing wrong. Okay, now I cannot see the rexis, what's happening there. Maybe that's problem. So, but finally, I just made it. You know, I think there's so many things we can learn from what happened there. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, the thing that everyone noticed a little bit is you can develop a little nausea if the eye is moving all over the place during surgery, and your visualization will largely be determined by your ability to keep the eye looking perpendicular to the floor, or you can think of it as having your iris in parallel to the floor. So all of your movements moving forward here on out, again, trying to keep that eye neutral will allow a couple of things. One, better visualization, but also the simulator has an ability, excuse me, an ability to simulate when you're actually moving the eye so much, gaping your wound, that viscoelastic exits the main wound, making your capsulorhexis more difficult.
Exactly what I did on purpose there, and I did a lot of mistakes, but I would love, for the people in the chat and the Q&A to notice is first about the amount of viscoelastic that could change everything. It will change vectors, how the rexis will behave. I also I was doing two different techniques we're going to talk a lot about, something called shearing, something called ripping. Be aware of that. I also didn't understand the limits of the anterior chamber. That white thing was happening. It was just, saying hello to the endothelium, and the endothelium will remember you forever. Sometimes I see people, it's like, oh, well, why the cornea is white? I almost didn't do ultrasound, but in the rexis, they just, went through the entire endothelium. So I'm going to go again, do a couple of different mistakes and see what happens. We're really, we want to see what people think. Let's do it again. That's the good thing about here. I don't have to see that patient tomorrow. Okay. You're seeing there, let's put some viscoelastics. That's a little better than time before. And this is going to be a mistake, like in a chain reaction. Okay. So we can understand the importance of what's happening in the beginning. Something like that. I see that all the time. I want to say two things. Is this correct, or this is too far in the periphery? And then I have two vectors here. What should I do? I don't have a place. Maybe I can do kind of like a rescue maneuver. Take it back, but ooh. So what happened? What happened now? Right? And when we see this, right? Like we're going to talk a lot about the mindset. We're going to talk about the decision making, because sometimes we think this is only motor skills. But right now I have a flap that, is it in the equator? Did it went away? What should I do? Should I, do another flap right here? Should I keep pulling? Let's see what happens if you keep pulling. This is the good thing about simulation. Okay. Now some people will say, okay, let's do another flap here and take it to the other side. It's very hard to take it here because we don't have a flap. And again, but then you can rescue it. So one of the good things is, what do you think about when the specific point what the rexis is doing the cut? Is it in the equator? Is it past it or no? Right? So what I wanted to, well, tell us you, Jeff. I'm gonna give you a heart attack with this surgery, right?
Yeah. I almost wish that none of you saw what just happened, although thankfully it is a simulator. So what I would say, consistent inputs, when you are doing consistent inputs in the eye, you'll start to have consistent outputs. That goes for simulation, that goes for patients. And it's only when you have consistent inputs that you're going to be able to start troubleshooting, what am I doing wrong? So if I always have in one portion, the rexis start to go out further than I'd like, and I'm doing the same thing on every single patient over and over, that becomes something very simple to remedy. And if Ivo would just, we'll speak about this much more later, shearing versus tearing. He talked about going between two techniques, just so that you can visualize the next time through on the simulator what he means. Because if I just grab the flap on one place versus one other place, and I do the same thing with my hand, I'll get a very, very different outcome with where the rexis is going to go.
I agree completely. So can we go to the slides now? We really want to talk about what happened in this, that it's a concept that I love. I have been many years behind it, and finally now we're just trying to show it and improve it. And this artificial division about what is happening when we're learning cataract surgery, because we focus in the motor skills, right? In what's happening in my hands and the motions and the vectors. But as you can see here, I did a lot of mistakes, but it's also about decision making. It's also about the cognitive area. When I talk about the cognitive, I talk about, we're going to talk right now about the decision making, the problem solving, what's happening, what I should do if this happens, and what should I do if that happens. And and in the last part, but I think, in my opinion, is one of the most important one, the mindset skills, the mental skills, right? How, I mean, when you have that in a patient and you're starting, how you can get back and put yourself back together and keep doing good decisions and keep calm and relax. It's very interesting. Can you pass me the next one, please? So when you go to the psychomotor skills, there is also secrets here, okay? There is a lot, for example, we're doing things like error-driven learning. So if you know everything that can go wrong, that's very good for you. When you get to a human being, you know what can happen. There is things about feedback, augmented feedback. Imagine that you are with a machine that gives you an objective feedback and a mentor that gives subjective feedback so you can improve. Think about deliberate practice. Think about practice over and over and over again at Capsulorhexis between waiting for next week to do another surgery with a human being. If we go to the next one and we talk about the cognitive skills, this is one kind of my favorites about the decision making, the problem solving, right? I have a flap that it's almost in the periphery. What should I do? I mean, what did I learn? Did I see a video? What to do? What's the rescue maneuver? You know, how is this capsule behaving? You know, if you notice, the tension was so high that every movement I will do, the rexis will go to the periphery. You need to control that. And finally, the mental skills, you know, and then here, people that know me know that these are my favorites. But this is about a journey as a surgeon. This is about facing complications, facing complex patients, improving every day a little bit to achieve mastery in a progressive way, right, step by step, but also to have the capability when you are in the OR, the capability to be focused, to be relaxed, okay, to be in something that I call a peak performance state. And that's the real secret, I think, for masters in cataract surgery, as you can see there. So right now, we're gonna go, again, Marshall, you're there?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So right now we're gonna go again to virtual surgery. We're gonna show you specifically about that. I was talking about deliberate practice, and I was talking about how you can learn step by step. I think that's the key, and that's what this machine can allow us, right? So we can do training, but you need to do the entire procedure since the beginning. You can deconstruct the task and start learning. So as you're gonna see here, can we show podemos mostrar? Sí. Okay, so look at this. Look at if this is not awesome. This is very hard to have in a human being, okay? So right now I have an anterior chamber with viscoelastic with a guided element, and I can do the flap. I can understand which is the correct the correct size and shape of the Capsulorhexis I need to do, and also you know, I can this is going to have a little of high tension, but I'm not going to have the sonular weakness or not, and I have an amazing red reflex. So as you can see here, I already have viscoelastic. Let's do the Capsulorhexis with assisted tone. Can enter the eye. You know, one of the problems I did today was it was too periphery, and I also love. Can you see that the tension is high? This was Marshall today said in the machine because he likes me. So, you know, the vector will always tend to go to the periphery. This could happen in young patients, in kids. Pediatric cataract will always. So I did that maneuver, you know, to control the size of the Capsulorhexis, and there is a lot of things happening here. This is what we're going to talk with Jeff, right? This looks simple and looks fast, but if you deconstruct it, there's so many things happening about my hand position, about the vectors and how how I am working with those vectors inside the eye with a centered eye, and just trying to have a nice, very nice shape and very nice size of that capsulorhexis. What do you think about that, Jeff? What do you think about deliberate practice and to deconstruct a task?
Yeah, you know, watching an expert do surgery is beautiful. It's also quite intimidating, particularly when you're early on in your training. Now, when I say you're early on in your training, many of you have done a lot of Phaco already. But there's a great study out of Canada that actually showed your learning curve is going to continue over 10 years. So potentially all of you are in your early learning curve of Phaco, depending on the time frame that you define that as. So as we're watching an expert do a capsulorhexis, the only way that you're going to be able to start doing a capsulorhexis in the same manner is deconstructing down to these basic steps. For instance, again, we'll be discussing here in a moment about shearing versus tearing, what that would look like. You could see the eye was so calm, beautifully parallel to the floor, the iris was the entire time. And as you know, now he's at a level where he doesn't even need to necessarily think about what I'm doing. You know, you can think about riding a bicycle, for instance. When you're very first riding a bicycle, you're thinking about putting your feet on the pedals, holding, where are the brakes, what's happening, what's going on around you. And for those of you that know how to ride a bike well now, you don't think about anything, you just get on. And that is where you will be, but it has to start with the deconstructing down to the basic steps.
I agree completely. And we're talking about riding a bike. I love that analogy. Just if you could, you know, I have a little girl, and if like I want to put some wheels in the sides, right? So she can understand what's happening, and then I can let her free, you know, to ride a bike. It's not gonna be easy to get into a bike and ride it just for the first time. One of the important things I was talking about augmented feedback, and here is where I think the value proposition of simulation is so big, especially virtual simulation. Why? Because I have an objective feedback of what happened in that capsulorhexis, right? I have here, and let's see if this, I can see here, sorry, because it's kind of tricky, where I need to move right here. Let's see if I can put this up. But basically what's gonna happen is I have a target achievement, efficiency, instrument handling, and tissue treatment. This is so awesome that I can also do a time lapse. Okay, I can for example, I do a replay, and the machine will tell me what did I do right, what did I do wrong. I can see the specific points where I did mistakes, and imagine this as a learning or a teaching tool. And also, what I really like is the objective feedback. Is to say, okay, how round was that capsulorhexis? How centered? The deviation of the rhexis radius from 2.5 millimeters. It gives me an objective measurement, and if I'm doing the correct capsulorhexis or not. But most of all, the instrument handling. Did the forceps enter in an horizontal or vertical way? The tissue treatment, right? Remember in the first one, I was playing with the endothelium. That's not good. And we need to understand that the endothelium is there, that the lens is there, and that the iris is there. So these are the limits of the anterior chamber. And it's very important to understand this structure. Well, do you use this a lot, Jeff? What do you think about these features?
Yeah, that really is one of the beautiful features. And as you're doing surgery on the IC, again, that time-lapse feature can actually show you where your actual mistakes would be. Now, I definitely recognize that not everyone has this technology in your centers, and understand that's an issue. The same thing can be done simply by your phone. So whatever model you're using, perhaps it's an animal eye, perhaps it's just tissue paper, whatever you have, as you come across different models, you yourself can record on your phone what you're doing over and over and over. And then you can go back and watch your own hands and watch your own technique and see where are those areas that you're having difficulty. We certainly hope there will be a time when simulation will be available to everyone and coming to you. because again, this is something that can allow you to perform this thousands upon thousands of times for weeks, months, even years in preparation for your surgery.
I completely agree. And now you have prepared for us these two amazing concepts that I think they are like the basis of how to, how to handle the vectors in the capsule.
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce a couple concepts, and then I'm going to have Ivo show you in the live surgery exactly what this looks like. Again, Ivo referenced a couple of different techniques going between techniques. So if I take a piece of paper, for instance, I can take my paper and I can tear away like this, or I could take the paper at the top and separate it like this. Now, there are a lot of different terms out in ophthalmology literature about this, but we're going to define this very clearly. So as you look at our slides today, this first one where you're tearing apart, that's what we're going to call shearing. Shearing is beautiful for capsulorhexis. It's something that's very, very safe. It's something that is very slow. You do have to re-grab over and over and over as you go around in the circle. But what it does is you're taking off just these small amounts as you go around, and allows you again to get some feedback on exactly what you're doing. This early on definitely is the way to go as you're learning instrumentation, handling in the eye, and how to pivot within your main wound so you don't lose viscoelastic. And on the next slide, you're going to see something here that we're calling ripping. Again, ripping is where you're just grabbing and separating apart. And although you may not have even recognized it yet, you'll see Ivo do a little bit of both in his typical capsulorhexis. He begins by grabbing the flap, folding it over, and then he shears. But as he continues further and further in his motion, eventually he starts pulling, and he actually starts doing more of this ripping motion. They will behave very differently. So again, early on, as we deconstruct down to basics, start with one, and then again, whether it's an IC or some other simulator that you have, some paper or otherwise, you can actually even take chips, the bags of chips, and you can start doing different things just to learn how this tearing, ripping, shearing behaves differently.
I love your explanation. I think it's very clear, Jeff. I would like to add something that, in the last couple of months, I try to communicate to students, and it's that this is not black and white, right? That sometimes you're doing shearing, and then you can do a little ripping so you control the correct shape and the correct size, and then you are also adapting. You're doing like a decision making on steroids, right? It depends of how it behaves. You will do shearing or ripping maybe in the same time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, completely agree with that. Experienced surgeons will absolutely do both. They'll begin almost always by a little bit of shearing and then progress to ripping. You did see earlier when Ivo was trying to save the rhexis that had gone out, that was something that is almost the extreme of ripping. And that again he'll show you in some of the save techniques.
Excellent. So right now, I hope you guys are understanding the journey we're getting into. The first thing is we did some mistakes, to understand what can go wrong and all a suboptimal technique. And then right now we're doing, then we did, so with guiding elements. But now let's go for a real capsulorhexis with everything we need to do. So you're gonna see here, let's put the image of the simulator. And this is what it looks like when it's complete, right? The first thing is I'm going to put viscoelastic. There is also even a technique to correctly insert the viscoelastic. I like to enter the anterior chamber, like inserting viscoelastic, then go far away, just so I can have the perfect anterior chamber like this. Then in my this is just, I know Americans do everything with cystotome, for example, and we can try that as well. But I would like to do, I love to do, the first flap with a cystotome. And as you can see here, the tension is high thanks to Marshall, that it's a friend. I need to get that clear that he's a friend, but he puts, cataracts that are not easy for me. anyways, so we're gonna grab that flap, and I'm doing many things. And one thing I love to say to people is that the flap creation, it's very, very important because it will determine, you know, the size and everything you can do for the shape and the vectors control, right? So right there, you can see a pretty nice capsulorhexis, you know, the correct shape, the correct size, pretty round. I would love more round, but it's a pretty capsulorhexis. And if we go to the score, it's a high score also, you know, saying how round it is, the shape, the centered. So you can have this amazing feedback and go back. And I'm going to do another one. I would love to see Jeff comments, but it is this thing about the mental image of an understanding a capsulorhexis. You can see I will say that maybe 80–90% of surgeons will always do the same thing, right? Let's try to do it now. We did it unclockwise. Let's do it clockwise, but not to show off, just to understand that I have those concepts in my head and I can adapt to different scenarios. So, well, I could do, you do it with a cystotome, Jeff, or you use a forceps? Because you Americans, I know you guys, you like the cystotome.
So this American, by the way, this is Dr. Sophia joining me, one of our young surgeons. I use pretty exclusively forceps. That's going to be very dependent on where you train. Many centers will start with the cystotome. Eventually, I started learning with the cystotome on my own just to be able to do it. And then in this next simulation, if you could show, at least for the first half, if you could just show some shearing all the way around, I think that would really help drive that concept home as well.
Yes, sure. The problem is it's Marshall. Remember that he put a high tension capsulorhexis. So there's no way I can do a little. I can do a little shearing, but it's gonna go away. Okay, so right there, let's see the capsulorhexis for the other side. Right, I'm gonna grab it. Oh, sorry, I'm doing the same thing. Or not. Okay, you can see there the shearing. The ripping will be like this to the center, okay? And again, shearing. I'm ripping. Okay, so I think this is very important that after you understand what the problems can be, and then you can start practicing all the basics by deconstructing surgery. Then you can do the complete procedure, and especially for the decision making, how the initial flap was. You can play with the size. You can go clockwise, unclockwise. Actually, you could play with your non-dominant hand. There's many things that will make you a better surgeon. What do you think about this, Jeff?
Yeah, just to reiterate, as now we're watching you do a capsulorhexis the way you normally would, what you're seeing is a lot of consistency. So going back to one of the concepts we discussed earlier, is consistent inputs will allow you to have consistent outputs in your surgery. So one of the things, again, that you'll notice, it's very subtle, but the forceps, as they come in, they're grabbing the flap at the same position each time. And sometimes, so one of the things in capsulorhexis, for if you're very, as you gain experience, what you'll do is you'll come with your capsulorhexis, you'll come across, and then you'll start to reposition that in a position where it's very easy for you to re-grab the next time. You can imagine if you leave it flat, it becomes far more difficult to grab. So if you leave it in the same place every time when you're done, then you can grab the capsule in the same spot, and that will give you a far more consistent output as you grab in the same spot all the way around.
I've heard ophthalmologists describe that in training as staging your regrasp, meaning thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. The beginner tends to be impulsive, like, oh, I can't get it to turn, the flap is long, I'm going to re-grab it, and they just let go. Whereas the pro thinks, okay, in another tug, it's going to be a little long, so I'm going to move that flap to the middle, elevate it, so that when I want to re-grab it, it's exponentially easier to do so.
I'm sorry, Marshall, you were asking to do another one?
No, I was just, I was just commenting on what Jeff said about staging a regrasp. I mean, I know that's a term you use, you know, and I had a second question though. Both you and Jeff have talked a lot about ripping and shearing. So strategically or tactically in the eye, what's the benefit of shearing versus ripping? Could you maybe elaborate on that?
That's a very good question. I believe that with shearing, you have more control of the final shape and the final, especially the shape is very, very round in an adult, okay? The kids are another thing. And second, you can control not only the shape, but the size. And in ripping, I mean, you can be very fast. And there's a lot of surgeons, I'm sure, out there that they do a lot of ripping. But then I think the control is less. I don't know what you think, Jeff.
Yeah, I completely agree. A couple concepts to remember as well, though, it's not that one is better or one is right or wrong. In fact, you're going to learn this rather frustratingly, that you will be trained in whatever technique your mentor thinks is right. And that will become your baseline for what is correct surgery. So there are residents, for instance, in our institution who early on, they're actually doing their capsulorhexis in more of a ripping way, because that's the way that their mentor or attending is doing it. But for early on, I would really, really advocate for just simple shearing over and over and over while you learn that basic instrumentation control, while you learn how to pivot inside of your wound. That's basic, consistent inputs that will give you really consistent outputs. And then invariably, you'll eventually start to do some of that ripping. Perhaps you decide you'd like to do your capsulorhexis eventually primarily ripping. That is an okay technique as well. Again, there's not one that's right or wrong, but for early on learning, deconstruct down to those basic steps so that you can be consistent in your inputs.
I love that comment. I agree 100%. We have another survey for you guys. Let's ask for the technicians to put it out. But while we're doing this survey, I wanted to make a comment because you said something, right? You said that, you know, you start with what your mentor teaches you. But don't you agree that with moments like this, with COVID, that you can see so many videos and actually you can, you know, train virtual surgery, artificial eyes. You can also play with other things. I mean, I didn't have that chance when I was learning because I didn't have these tools, but now people can, you know, be creative, and it's very interesting times in that way. So about the questions, I hope they're clear for you. If you have any, I think they're pretty clear. We would love to see what you think about them.
In the background, a couple of things happening right now. So necessity is the mother of invention. It's really the mother of innovation. And we're seeing in so many ways, COVID comes, disrupts our lives, disconnects us from what we're normally allowed to do. My trainees right now aren't able to do the training in cataract surgery we would normally do to prepare them to practice on their own. And I can tell you there's extraordinary innovations such as this webinar, such as live virtual surgery when we're not in a position we can do regular surgery. So you will all come up with your own innovations. And I encourage you in this era where it's so easy to share information to post those, to share those. There's young ophthalmology groups in Latin America that have an incredible network now through your national society and international society that can help share some of those resources.
I agree 100%. Let's see what people responded, because we have a little more of virtual surgery and we're going to talk about your answers. Okay, so first question, how confident do you do the capsulorhexis when the view clouded by liquefid cortex? Somewhat difficult, 46%. Very confident, 5%. Interesting, because this is what we wanted to talk. The simulation is not only about learning, like basic steps, but also about complex steps and about the decision making and problem solving in those steps, the cognitive, the cognitive element. Second question is, how confident do you do the capsulorhexis with a wide cataract? And somewhat difficult, 49%. Again, let's put me the results for 3, 4, and 5, please. Para abajo, pásale las respuestas. So I can see, if you guys can read it, please help me here, because I cannot see the results from 3, 4, and 5.
Number 3, how confident do you do the capsulorhexis in the presence of weakened zonular muscles? So 31% are somewhat difficult. Another interesting 47% say very difficult. And then our last question is, how confident are you in completing a capsulorhexis after you've radialized the flap and have to go into recovery mode? So here again, we see 46% of respondents say it's somewhat difficult, and 27% say it's very difficult. And that's a perfect segue to take us into the final live virtual surgery session after we go through some instructional videos with guiding elements. I'll hand it off to you there.
Yes. So Jeff, we have here a video for you, and we'll love to hear about specifically how you train the cognitive and the mental, aspects of surgery. Play.
Step by step.
Sácale el audio. Okay, that's perfect. That's without audio, Jeff.
Yeah, so moving forward, you'll see a few things here. This is going to kind of take you step by step.
We can hear you, Jeff.
No, sí.
Oh. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasó? Y no se puede pagar del...
Es que ya lo pagué, pero no lo vas a hacer.
Creo que están escuchando a nosotros. Okay, Jeff, I have so audio problems. So can you describe the surgery and talk about it?
Are you able to hear the audio now?
Yes.
Excellent. So again, the things that I would draw your attention to again are how the eye is very, very calm as he is in it. He's not moving the eye left or right in any real significant way. And you can see where he comes and grabs right here. He's really, really starting with shearing. And now he's almost ripping towards the end. You can see as your technique continues and you hold on to that flap longer, you'll transition from shearing then to a little bit of ripping at the end. And this is what I'm talking about early on, this consistent regrasping all the way around. And that's where the early modules on the IC are nice, because it gives you that target, it gives you that circle. Again, so pay attention now to not so much to where the flap is being formed, but watch the forceps the entire time. Watch how the forceps goes laterally and now starts to come in towards the center. And that's repeated over and over and over. That same consistent input where you pull perpendicular to the flap during the shearing motion, and then eventually start to pull towards the center in the ripping motion. And watching videos, if you were to watch this video over and over, it would have a powerful impact on you. I'll just share one example as we watch this one more time. Again, watching paying close attention here to the pivoting within the wound. The eye is not moving, the iris is staying parallel to the floor. So I was doing surgery with some surgeons in Tanzania. These were surgeons who had only done perhaps 15 to 20 total cataract surgeries. Again, watching here, he's going to grab the same place on the flap each time. We addressed this earlier. You can see not elevating the wound. Elevating the wound will remove viscoelastic, just like pressing down on the wound. So as we worked with these African surgeons, We only had one microscope this first day, so we started watching videos over and over. We watched videos exactly the same way that you just watched the Capsulorhexis. We watched perhaps 2, 3, 4 hours of videos of small incision cataract surgery. And every one of them the next day, including myself, felt like the surgery was far easier simply because we had actually just watched over and over the same consistent technique and input. It was almost like when we finally sat down to do surgery, we were able to visualize what needed to happen as we do it. And that's exactly what happens with the simulator. Again, hundreds or thousands of practice sessions. By the time you sit in an eye, you visually know where the forceps should grab. You visually know where the forceps should move inside of the eye. And you'll also start to recognize when you lose your red reflex because you're raising or lowering the eye with your forceps.
Next slide.
Yes. La siguiente, por favor. Okay. And then, you know, this is one of my favorites, and I'm really a fan of the cognitive training and the mind training. And somebody told me, some amazing mentor told me, when you have a different perspective of the eye, if you have a completely different way to see what you normally do in one way, you can learn so much from it. So these are side views videos from simulation. If we think about it, simulation is information, and we could, you know, have a different perspective of surgery. And in this case, I think you have an amazing seat in the stadium to see the game, right? And you're understanding first. It's important to understand when you put viscoelastic how everything changes at the anterior chamber. This seems sometimes logic, but it has a profound effect on the vectors and how the rhexis is moving. Remember that in the beginning, I did the huge mistake of I didn't put enough viscoelastic, and that could be a very big problem. And that problem happens also in the last steps, because, you know, the student is moving, and viscoelastic is coming out. So you keep working with not enough viscoelastics. And that's very important. The second thing is, when you have a perspective like this, I think you understand the shearing and the ripping technique in a much better. You can see how in this view, you can see the shearing like so perfectly, right? Like the flap, it's turned on itself, and you just completely in control of how the vector of the rhexis it's created. What do you think about this, Jeff? I think these are amazing views and gives you a lot of information.
Very much so. Again, one of the things that we do with our trainees early on is we have them record their hands. It can be rather simple. A scrub nurse or someone can just record what their hands are doing during surgery. And it's a view and an understanding that will really accelerate your growth as a surgeon. I would also challenge you to do that when you're doing any kind of simulator work. Again, getting that kind of side view, understanding what you look like to an observer sitting beside you, will dramatically help your hand position.
Exactly. And this is an amazing video also to talk about the 3 pillars we were talking about, right? You can see everything here that it's happening in motor skills, you know, how the fine motor movements are completely controlled, but also the decision-making of the surgeon. You know, the mental state you need to be in this peak performance state to make a perfect capsulorhexis. This is such a key important step in Phaco, you know, and I think if you manage to those 3 pillars, you're going to be an excellent surgeon. So just to finish, we're doing great with time, but just to finish, let's go back to do some virtual reality simulation and talk about 2 important things. The first thing that everybody is going to ask, and I think you can train here very well, is a rescue maneuver. Okay, one of the important things is, okay, what happens when that rhexis like that? I hope you can see it there, is going away. And imagine your mental state when you are with a human being, right? And the next movement, you have two different paths. Like, it's like Morpheus with the blue pill and the red pill. What's going to happen here? So imagine your mindset in that moment. So right here, I hope you can see it correctly. And you can see many different rescue maneuvers. I have seen surgeons, just take the flap and pull to the center. But another one I would love to talk about is when you just grab the flap, you can see there, you put it back in place and you just push back. And look at that vector. Did you see that? How the vector completely changes and goes to the center. Let's do it again. Let's try to lose that capsulorhexis, even in a moment that we cannot see it. Because here you need to make the decision is that capsulorhexis just past the equator, yes or no? Okay, right there, for example, it's very, very peripherally. And you can just, if you pull to the center and do the ripping, look at the vector, how it changes, right? Look at that. It went completely to the center. So again, remember the shearing, the ripping. If I do, for example, some shearing, I can just make it. Sorry about this, guys, but I'm playing with the eye. I will never do this with a human being, but so this is going to be very, very periphery, almost in a point, and I just can't see it. I can't see it, right? But I know it's not in the equator then, and then I pull it back in the place, and I pull down. Look at that. It's going to come. Okay? And I finish it. So the rescue maneuver is something. Imagine if you start doing Phaco with a human being. Are you going to be able to do this maneuver? Do you have? Probably you're going to have a chance, but since you guys are all good, it's going to take time. What about if we train this in simulation and you understand the vectors, and then if something happens, it's very easy for you guys. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, again, one of the questions that came up that I really liked is, for those who don't have a simulator. So again, watching that simulation, being able to practice and see what happens in different vectors is a really, really key thing for you to learn, because if you're not learning it in a simulation environment, the only time you're going to learn it is when you're inside of an eye working on a patient. So if you don't have access to an IC simulator, things I would recommend is try to find centers that do. We certainly, of course, have an open door policy to allow trainees to come in where they don't have it at their institution. The other thing that you can do is try to find other types of simulated materials. Kataro makes a really wonderful kit. It's a company out of Japan. And what it is, it's a sheet of paper. And on that sheet of red film, you can do perhaps even 100 capsulorhexis practice. The other thing that my daughter, Dr. Sophia, just got me are what are called spicy Cheetos. So the thing that I love about spicy Cheetos, beyond how wonderful they taste, is I can come here at the edge of a spicy Cheeto bag, and if I start to make a tear, I can start to see what the difference is between shearing and the difference is between ripping. Now, this isn't elastic like a capsule, but again, this is the type of thing that you can start to really learn how I can start to make a curve by doing the shearing motion. Or if I want to do a ripping motion, what's going to happen if I start pulling in different directions with that? So I'm going to go back to you for the next comments, Ivo.
Yeah, no, but I wonder if that's real spicy. I live in Mexico City, and we know what spicy is here. So,
hey, just for the record, you're from Uruguay and you don't like hot food. So.
Yeah, I needed to learn what spicy is. I had to learn. So just the last one, and just to play around. Look at this one, a wide cataract. And Marshall was kind enough to do a couple of tweaks here too for me. So I hope you understand what's going to happen, because this is not only a wide cataract, it's going to have other things. And then again, to apply everything we're learning into a very complex case, I think it's going to be very, very helpful for us to learn about. The first thing we talked about is the correct amount of viscoelastic, especially here. People were asking me, there is a lot of other maneuvers to make this eye be in a perfect condition. some people, will do a laser with YAG, to put the pressures together. Other people will just, pick the eye and absorb the material. But in this case, let's try to do a capsulorhexis here. I put correct amount of viscoelastic. I'm gonna have a cystitome, and I want you to see how it's gonna behave. Look at that. So then again, right? I'm sure you already understood that there is high tension, but there is something extra. Look at that. Look at that movement. Okay, there is something extra here. So this is a very complex case, right? And the mindset here, oh my God. So you need to be calm, and you need to be relaxed, and you need to be not drinking mate like we do in Uruguay. So right here, I'm going to try to do the capsulorhexis, but I want you to understand how it's behaving. If you understand how that capsule is behaving, is that we have a very weak sonula, okay? We didn't talk about this, but this is very important too. The movements you do subincisionally are so important, because there you lose visibility, and then you also lose control, and that's the place that most complications happen. Okay, so everything went pretty fine here. This size of the capsulorhexis. Remember that this cataract can be very hard, so you want a big capsulorhexis, and don't stress the sonula, because you already know that the sonula is weak. So the thing here, everything went smooth, but we can make it go wrong. I did it in the past. Don't get me wrong. What do you think about this kind of cataract, Jeff? I think we can learn a lot from simulation, to approach this kind of case.
Yeah, very much so. I'm really glad that Marshall made all the settings very easy for you, so that you could complete it and make it look good.
He's a friend. He's a friend.
That's very kind. Simulation really is a gift to you as a trainee, and it's also a gift to your patients. This type of practice on a complex eye is something that you really aren't going to get early on, or at least we hope you don't get early on, because the first portion of your learning curve in cataract surgery, first you're learning, how do I sit while I look straight ahead and have my hands down in a different position? How do I move instruments so that they elegantly move within the eye and I'm not pushing on the tissue? And so to try and manage something complex, or heaven forbid, a complication like a posterior capsule tear, vitreous loss, when you don't even have the basic skill set of being able to sit comfortably, being able to have your instruments do exactly what your brain is telling your hands to do, it really is an unfortunate situation to be put in. And that's where, again, simulation is a gift. The one thing I'll say as well, many of you will have access to things like pig eyes or goat eyes in wet lab settings. Those are not good to learn capsulorhexis on at all. In fact, it can perhaps even teach you really bad habits. It's certainly a useful tool to learn how to use instruments in a space, but it really is not a good model. It would have very poor construct validity, I'm afraid.
Exactly. That's very important. You said, right, Jeff? I mean, you can learn a little bit about sharing and reaping with, easy models, but the decision making that happens here, the feedback, a centered eye. We also have some experience with bionic models. They're very good for many things. They're artificial eyes that could be very good for different reasons, and especially for capsulorhexis, they're very good. But here, that feedback. For example, let's do another one. Let's do another one, and let's not do everything in the right. So let's understand that the sonula is weak. So if we manipulate that, it can go wrong. Remember that tension is high. So if I go like that, it wants to go out, right? Then I can do some ripping and take it back. I do ripping and I make it very small. And okay, I can go back to sharing, and okay, this needs to be a little bigger. But what happens if I do something like this? Oh my God, that's a big problem, okay? So that lens wants to go to the back. We need to call retina. We didn't need to do an intracap. I don't know what, but I wanted to show you how easy, you can have a problem with a weak sonula. So this is very smooth, and you see a perfect capsulorhexis in the beginning, but there's many things that can go wrong. So we are finishing here because we're perfect timing, but we really want to see, what do you guys think? If there is good question, Marshall has been taking notes about the questions, but what we really want to say is we don't want you to panic. There's so many people in training that they're saying, I spent my entire life waiting for this moment to do surgery. What do I do? And our main objective here is to say we have tools. Let's keep the skills. Let's improve the skills during the pandemic. We're going to be here for you to help you in any way we can. And let's see those questions. Let's see your final thoughts, Jeff. It was so nice to have you here. We wanted you here, and we have you here. We're so happy.
It's been such an honor and so much fun. Thank you for allowing Dr. Sophia and I to join you. I'm grateful that Marshall finally gave you a hard case on that last one to show you messing it up. I can't, I really do wish that I could have a moment to speak with each of you on your learning curve through cataract surgery. It really is something where there's going to be really high highs where you do things perfectly well. And then of course, there are going to be times when you don't do things well and you're trying to understand, can you do this? Are you the type of person who can be an excellent surgeon? And the thing that I would encourage you to do is, one, seek out mentors. Seek out a great mentor that you can rely on throughout the 10 years of your growth as a cataract surgeon. And then two, allow yourself to make mistakes, but never compromise and accept them. If you hear of someone who has perhaps a 1% capsule tear rate, that should be all of our goal, because that's the type of surgeon we all need to aspire to. But that can only happen if you forgive yourself when you do have mistakes.
Sage advice. Guys, we do have some really good questions. Do we have time to field a few from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, so Camilo asks a very practical question that I think both of you have touched at a number of points, and that's regarding, Ivo, a topic you talk a lot about, which is ergonomics. Specifically, how do you optimize your hand position relative to the head and your delicate hand position or finger position holding the utrata? Could you maybe speak to that?
Oh yeah, that's an excellent question. And maybe Camilo doesn't know me, but I'm completely obsessed with the hand position, completely obsessed. So I can show you right here what the hand position should be, at least in my opinion, and I have done this as a pattern and good in everybody. Well, Jeff probably does temporally. Do you, Jeff? You do temporally? Okay. So we do it in the front of the patient, and I think it's easier in the way that you can put the 3 fingers in the front head of the patient, and then it's easier to maneuver in this way, okay? So you're not, as you can see there, this is a mistake to take the eye outside of the red reflex. So if you have the tension, that was also in the video, the tension is in the forehead of the patient, and you have the ability to move these 2 fingers. This is something that's gonna be so helpful. If you do it like Jeff, it changes a little bit, and I don't do it temporarily a lot, but you need to change, where you put your hands, but you are always also trying to float through the incision, okay? You need to float and you need to pivot. This is the 2 important things in hand position. And then again, hand position for me, is where the secret is for a perfect capsulorhexis, You need to know the vectors, but if your hand position and your movements are not correct, you're not gonna have a good outcome. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I can't overemphasize hand position. Your ability to
another surgeon.
Yes, this is Dr. Lincoln. He's going to be so quiet and get ice cream in just a moment. So the wonderful thing, if you hold the instrument, I'll just give you this little visual. You have small muscles that control your fingertips, and then you have large muscles that control your forearms and otherwise. So if I want to move an instrument 1 millimeter, I need to have my fingers curved. And you've seen that with Ivo, the way he holds an instrument, his fingers are curved. Anytime we get a little nervous, sometimes we lock our fingers out. So they become kind of firm like this. And if it's like that, now I'm relying on my bicep and my tricep to move that instrument. It's very difficult to move that in small millimeters, whereas now I can move it in very, very small, elegant move up, down, left, right by having curved fingers.
Okay.
Very good question.
Great feedback, guys. Starry had a very basic question that a novice would have as they're kind of exploring their instrumentation options. And Starry wanted some feedback on what type of Utrata would be best for a novice to utilize in learning the Capsulorhexis.
Very, very good question. And for me, for example, I would love to show it. As we were saying, this movement with 2 fingers is going to be very, very important right here. Okay, so if it's not plain, if it's plain, it's harder to make that pivoting movement. When it's round, that's my opinion. I prefer it round so you can control it better. And that will also, we didn't talk about this. I mean, we could talk a lot about this, but we didn't talk about the incision size, right? But it's something important to be aware of. If you're doing a 2.2 incision or lower, the Capsulorhexis is going to be harder. Okay, if you do a 2.8, you're going to have a lot of more area to move. So you can spend a lot of money in a forceps. You need to know that. And you know, when they're more expensive, it will be easier to maneuver. But if you understand the basic concepts and if you understand everything, you could do a Capsulorhexis with anything.
Yeah, that's a great point. The thing that I would say is you'll likely be limited in what you'll be able to use. In fact, you'll be using whatever your mentor tells you to use in surgery. And as such, you truly can learn on anything. I totally agree on a rounded forcep. I think it's much more elegant inside the eye. Trying to do a Capsulorhexis through a 2.2 incision with a forcep that's designed for a 2.8 becomes very, very difficult and challenging. That is one consideration as well. But again, there are individuals around the world who can do, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of surgeries with very, very basic Utrata instruments. And that's because they understand the fundamentals of keeping their fingers curved in a way that allows them to elegantly move inside the eye. And then they also pivot within the wound.
And there's a very good question here, Marshall.
It can work.
I see a very good question here because it takes us to the extreme. Enrique is talking about what do you do in an ophthalmos, you know, in an eye that it's so small. And, you know, there's many things. People will say, do a vitrectomy, wherever. But my point here is, if you understand these concepts and you can adapt to the eye and you put a lot of viscoelastic and you're in control with the vector, you can do a Capsulorhexis in almost any case. Especially pediatric cataracts, is going to be ripping 100%. But if you understand that, if you're doing decision making on steroids and see how it's behaving and you're adapting like real time, you can do a Capsulorhexis in any single case. Sorry, Martin.
Last question, Beatrice, and there was some conversation happening in the background through the chat window. She had a very good question on finding it difficult to regrasp in the subincisional quadrant. This is a common issue, and I think this really boils down to what you talk about are the mental and cognitive aspects, mainly forward planning and so on. And maybe you guys can speak to this last question.
Jeff, you can start.
Just briefly, I did type a response in there to plan ahead, leaving your flap just before you go to the subincisional space so you can regrasp just before is going to be your simplest way. Perhaps that may not be possible in all cases. The other thing that can be really helpful is, again, if this is my wound here and I come in with my instrument and I'm pushing down to grab, I'm distorting the cornea, I'm removing viscoelastic from the eye, and I just don't have a good clear view. Whereas if I have a great fill with viscoelastic, I pivot inside the wound and I come down, then I have much better visualization.
I love that concept. I would like to add is what I tell people who are in training and is to try to grab it just before you get into that zone and try not to re-grasp in that specific zone. You need to be, you know, aware of that, and you need to plan in ahead. Try not to re-grasp there, because it's going to be a problem.
I knew you were going to say that, and that's why I thought this would be a perfect question. I think that's pretty much it, guys. It's been a great session. I want to thank you both for your expertise and willingness to share that knowledge. And for the audience, this is the first episode of 6. We'll be on next week talking about a step that I think is often underestimated for its complexity, which is hydrodissection, because no two eyes are the same. So we hope you'll join us, and I'll let you guys take it away from here.
Yes, I want to take 1 minute to really thank Jeff. It has been such a great experience to work with him. I hope we can keep doing it. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. You know, we love what you do and the way you communicate, Jeff. Thank you so much for being here with us.
No, thank you. It truly is an honor. I would love to, you know, for those considering coming back or grabbing your resident friends coming back next week, I'll just leave this teaser. In my experience in the United States, looking at surgeons around my area, there's only a handful, possibly 10 to 15%, who really understand doing hydrodissection the exact right way. So I'll just leave that there. We all have a lot to learn. Thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marshall, for everything.